Great, thank you. I feel like I'm on a TV show entering from here. It's quite impressive. Firstly, before I get started, I just want to give a big round of applause to Lisa and everyone who's been involved in organizing this. We've been to many events. This is absolutely beautiful, and you've done an amazing job. So a round of applause, please. So as was covered, my name is Alex Challans, and I'm the CEO of Resonance, which owns the Quantum Insider. We're the leading provider of market data on the quantum industry. At Resonance, we also have the privilege of covering other adjacent sectors, think space and AI. We're here today to talk about whether we're at a quantum inflection point, which I've termed recently the Jensen inflection. So anyone who's been following the quantum industry has seen Jensen's comments on quantum. It's gone from very negative to, hey, it's an inflection point in the industry. We've been tracking this since 2018, and I can tell you intuitively, I feel that 2025 is very much an inflection point. But we're a data company. We don't believe in pure intuition, so let's dig in. There's 4 critical themes that I would like to cover today, equally important: funding, commercialization, technology, and broad awareness. I'm going to start with funding. Government continues to be the prime mover in the quantum industry. We track over $40 billion of investment in quantum. Recent trends include the acceleration of interest in the Gulf region, where our team have been recently. We're seeing the US, Canada, and the UK maintain momentum. And of course, I want to call out the latest updated Canadian strategy. You can access it in the physical copy over there. Now, the other side of this equation is also VC. It's always very tempting to look at these charts and focus on VC being a key driver in quantum. But I want to kind of make you think about the kind of level of investment here. I mentioned $40 to $50 billion of funding coming from government. That's typically commitments of 5 to 10 years. You can do the math. Basically, that's $5 to $10 billion per year. You see on this slide here, we've seen an interesting upward trend since 2012, and then some excitement in 2022. The whole VC market was down in 2023. But throughout, VC has not been the prime mover. This is very much still a government, public-driven market. Now, this year is interesting. It's a very frothy market at the moment. We're off to a very strong start. I think one thing I'd like to flag here is that 2025 number, a lot of it's driven by some of the large American public companies trading off their very strongly trading equity. They're issuing stock for more money. It's an interesting power that these public companies have. That also includes D-Wave as well, listed in the US as well. The other key trend that we've been seeing is mergers and acquisitions. Typically, we see this as a sign of maturity in the industry. And I'll get onto how all the vendors are operating in a second. But just in the last few months, we've had IonQ, an American ion trap company, do at least 3 acquisitions. There are, of course, question marks that are starting to come out around sovereignty, around should we be protecting our local champions. I'll leave that for you to debate. So let's move into commercialization. Now, I'm always a bit of a stickler around this. How many of you in the room have heard about the $1 trillion potential of quantum? Just a little raise of hands. I'm very curious. All right, $1 trillion, $1 trillion. Okay, so the world's GDP right now is $100 trillion. 1%. This is pretty aggressive. This is pretty aggressive. But what we're talking about here is a hypothetical future of how quantum unlocks value. What do we mean by value? We mean new revenue generation. We had it in the talk earlier. We mean saved costs. But this is a seductive number. It's a useful number politically. And it may well be true, but we should ground this a little bit. What we focus on is being quite precise around where money is being made today and in the future by quantum vendors across the stack. We track about $2 billion being made in 2024, and that's real revenue, whether it's selling a quantum device or selling a piece of hardware that goes into it. Drawing the lines on the supply chain aren't perfect, but it gives you a steer of how this market is shaping up. So, what is the quantum ecosystem? This is one of the most infuriating slides that we do at the Quantum Insider, and I'll tell you why. We consistently fail to make everyone happy because we can't fit everyone on this slide. We just annoy people with it. But I've done it anyway, and I apologize in advance. What I wanted to do is guide on some of the key areas we look at. And I do want to flag here, this is very, very quantum computing heavy. Now, for those of you who aren't so much in the quantum ecosystem, it's very important, as we just had a talk on quantum sensing, and we also talk about quantum communications. There's overlap, but what I'm focused on mostly today is quantum computing. Now, please send me an angry email if I've missed you, but I would flag that our product, which is our intelligence platform, tracks about 1,400 vendors across the quantum supply chain. So it's worth having a look if you want to dig in. I've always been interested in this trillion-dollar number, translating it back to how much money is really being made in this market. And the best way we found of doing it is actually going through and laboriously tracking where deals are happening in this market. You may get an intuitive sense for when quantum computers are being sold. What we've tried to do is actually list every single damn one we can find. There's a lot of confidential stuff, but we get a sense of the overall trends. So in 2024, in a market which is nascent, we did have nearly 50 quantum devices, quantum computing devices, publicly announced to be sold. As we were discussing with a smaller group this morning, a lot of this is getting wrapped into broader, what we call quantum economy deals. This is quite interesting. It's quite difficult to sell a $20, $30, $40, $50 million device on its own. What's quite important is to wrap this as part of a broader ecosystem development strategy that allows a region to both technologically advance but also provide workforce development for the region. We're tracking hundreds of these deals. This is all kind of irrelevant if you don't have someone buying. So what we like to talk about here is end users of quantum technology. In this case, we're focused on quantum computing. When we first started looking at this in 2022, we counted about 200 enterprises who had demonstrated either some POC or some research into quantum computing. Today, our team are tracking over 500 enterprises. And I would say, if I'm honest, like, of those, there's probably 50 to 100 who have materially sized teams who are really engaging with this. Here's just an example of some of the names here. We're missing some important names like BMO here, for example. But it gives you a bit of a flavor of the kind of organizations that are starting to engage in quantum research. Why do I show this? These are big household names. These are companies that are making products that you and I use every single day. These people are taking quantum computing seriously, and the fact that we're seeing a lot more of them tells me that we're starting to near an inflection point. Now, this is the most scary bit of the presentation for me. I'm going to be honest, my background was I was an investor, right? I am not a quantum physicist, but we have one on the team, sat over there, Chris Coleman, who you should direct any technical questions and indeed corrections on this over there. Blame him, okay? Now, what I've tried to do here is show a lot of complex data with a very general theme, which is up and to the right. So what this shows here is physical qubit counts for a selection of organizations, for example, IBM, Inflection, IonQ, Alice and Bob, IQM, etc., as well as error rate. Now, on a very high level, we want more qubits, lower errors, higher gate speed, a bunch of stuff. But what we're seeing over time is we're starting to get into this region of potentially getting to fault-tolerant quantum computer. This is horrendously out of date already, even though this was done in the last 3 months. But I can tell you what's nice is that we're seeing a very good trend. Often you'll see naysayers on quantum saying it's never going to happen. They may be right. We don't know if this is going to be nuclear fusion. I think a lot of us are believing that it's not going to be that. When I see stuff like this, it gives me a lot of hope that we're at an inflection point to actually demonstrate useful quantum computing. We actually have open sourced our tracking of this, so if you want to have a look and compare every single gate fidelity or gate speed or qubit count of every single device, we've opened it up to the community. You can have a look at it on our website. There's been some big headlines from the big three. I know we're in Canada, I know these are American companies, but I think it is important to flag. These are some of the companies that drive a lot of the stock market value. It's important that we cover that these organizations are taking quantum very, very seriously. Over the last few months, we have seen AWS release its quantum computing chip, we've seen Microsoft's Majorana announcement, and we've seen Google's Willow chip and error correction breakthroughs. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I think every time I see a big announcement from one of these large corporates, it makes it a little bit more real for me. And indeed, I'm going to do a horrible job here of covering all the recent Canadian success stories, but I just wanted to flag a couple of examples here from the community, again, focused on computing only. So if I can cover, you've got Photonics demonstration of distributed entanglement last year. You've got Nord Quantique's improvement in error correction approaches earlier this year. We've had D-Wave announce commercial availability of their Advantage 2 system. And then congratulations to Xanadu. I think it was just last week it was publicly announced, obviously the paper came out earlier, with very recent demonstrations of photonic qubits on silicon nitride. And most importantly, I know this isn't a technology announcement, but I did want to call out that the recent progress made on the G7 agenda, getting quantum mentioned. And today, here, everyone in the room at Quantum Now. So why is quantum now? I think there's a few things I look at that make this a bit more real. Like Evan, who co-founded the business with me in 2018, we kind of did this when there wasn't that much out there. And it's quite amazing. We were saying as we walked along here, we saw the beautiful sign, we saw how many people are really engaging in quantum. We reflected on how exciting it is, how many people are taking this, taking an interest. And not just people, it's politicians, it's government leaders, it's corporate leaders taking this very, very seriously. I had the pleasure of sitting with one of the people who did the UNESCO International Year of Light 10 years ago. I sat with him in Abu Dhabi, and I asked him, why did you push so hard for this year to be the International Year of Quantum? And he said to me, he says, because now it's ready. And I asked him, what do you mean? And he says, well, it's at that lovely inflection point where there's still a lot of work to be done. But we can start to see some of the great progress behind us. We had Raja earlier with the Canadian government who kind of reminded to me and made me reflect on, we started in Canada with, I think it was like 15 startups or something. And now we're seeing today a proliferation of organizations, use cases, etc. So we often beat ourselves up about progress. We really do in deep tech. But I wanted to note that this is something we should really be proud of, getting this onto the world stage in the International Year of Quantum. And congrats to Lisa and the team for getting this particular event part of the core agenda. One thing I said to my mum at Christmas last year was that I am going to have you understand what my job is this year. So I asked Evan, my business partner, how are we going to do that? And I said, well, she does watch quite a lot of Netflix. It's quite a lot of Amazon Prime. And we kind of sat there one evening and we're like, we need to get quantum in the public eye. And that's exactly what Evan's done. So we have been filming all over the world for the last few months, CEO of Fujitsu at AWS, at Google's offices, speaking to the pioneers, creating the past, present, and future of quantum. We've had 3 Nobel Prize winners be engaged with it. We've had some of the senior leaders in this quantum industry, people who've defined the technology. And so we're very excited that this will be in streaming services, hopefully by Christmas this year, if not by January. Last but not least, I keep coming back to end users in quantum. We can keep selling hardware, we can sell software, we can sell bits and pieces along the supply chain. Ultimately, you either have the government funding that, dribbling money down and allocating it over time from that 50 billion. But at a certain point, a mature market needs end-user demand. Now, it's really hard at the moment because you see these companies in AI going from 0 to 10 million annual recurring revenue in like 2 weeks. You see people who are getting real use cases straight away. Quantum's a little bit different in that you're kind of taking a binary judgment call on being able to solve billion, trillion-dollar problems. So early this year, we launched the Quantum Innovation Index. And really, it was to try and highlight some of the innovators within what I call the end users. So far, we've covered the automotive players, financial players, and life sciences players. And what's been great is you've seen leading figures within these organizations start to pick up the mantle and say, hey, we need to be doing more in quantum. We need to be testing. We need to be doing a POC. I've been very encouraged by the level of engagement. If you'd like to see this, it's all publicly available at thequantumindex.com. So I'll just close out a little bit about us, and I'll take a couple of questions if we have a minute. We are empowering the decision makers with intelligence to navigate the complex emerging technologies of the future. We're working with some of the largest companies in the world, and indeed national governments, to help with both their data and their national strategies. We have a beautiful platform we're very proud of, which we have many customers who are using to track on an always-on basis everything that's going on in the quantum market, and indeed our other markets like climate and space. And indeed, we've been working with many ecosystems internationally to help them define what does a future quantum economy look like. So I just wanted to close up with a final thank you for listening today. I know it's been a bit of a longer talk. You can find out more about everything we do at the QR code there if you're interested. And in the last 1 minute or two, I'm very happy to take any questions. Just one question.